Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever it is that you are watching this video. So this is the second video in our series for Kingdom Plantae. I hope you have been keeping up with the worksheet for the last lesson. In case you didn't, I will just show you the worksheet once again. So this is a soft copy or the colored copy of the worksheet that you should receive in Google Classroom. You may have the hard copy, which is the black and white version. Both are equally fine. So with the last video, you should be able to fill in this part about the unique characteristics of all organisms in Kingdom Plantae. Please fill in the diagrams as well. For today's video, we're going to focus on this right part, which is group Bryophyte. Okay, you'll be listing the unique characteristics of all organisms in group Bryophyte, and you can draw or sketch the appearance for some of the species in Bryophyta, Hepatophyta, and Anthocerophyta. In this video, I hope you will be able to learn more about bryophytes, which mostly consist of organisms like mosses, liverworts, and hornworts, and kind of just appreciate their role even though they are smaller, physically little creatures. If you're ready, let us get started with bryophytes. The bryophytes, mosses, liverworts, hornworts. So the learning objectives for this subtopic is that you should be able to describe the unique characteristics of bryophytes, and you should be able to state its classification into three phylum, which is Bryophyta, Hepatophyta, and Anthocerophyta. And you should also be able to state the terrestrial adaptation for bryophytes, which is what makes them live and survive on land. So let's get right into it. The unique characteristics of bryophytes. Bryophytes can be found in moist and shady places. Their dominant generation is its gametophyte. So the gametophyte is larger in size and it's long-lived, whereas the sporophytes are smaller in size, short-lived, and the sporophytes of bryophytes will depend on the gametophytes for nutrients and water. The gametophytes are able to carry out photosynthesis. Sporophytes can't. These bryophytes are non-vascular plants. That means they lack vascular tissues, which is xylem and phloem for transport and also support. And they do not have true roots, stems, or leaves. Some of them have specialized conducting tissues to transport water and organic compounds, but the cell walls of these specialized conducting tissues lack lignin. So if you remember, our xylem of other plants have lignin that makes them more, they're able to support the weight of the plant, that makes it stronger and more resistant to water pressure and all that stuff. But in bryophytes, although they have cells that kind of do conducting water and organic material, they do not have lignin and therefore not classified as true xylem and phloem. We can classify bryophytes into three phyla, which is phylum Bryophyta, made of mosses, phylum Hepatophyta, liverworts, and phylum Anthocerophyta, which are hornworts. So in the example of Bryophyta, we would have Polytrichum species as our main example. They're very cute looking and they have that very iconic gametophyte green part you see right here. This is the gametophyte green part and the very iconic sporophyte orangey brown part up here, which is kind of the basic diagram you learn about bryophytes. For liverworts or hepatophytes, you would have Marcantia species. I forgot what is the proper way to pronounce it, but this is what it would look like, the Marcantia species. And in phylum Anthocerophyta, you would have hornworts, which is Anthoceros species. Of course, these are not the only species in their phylum, but they are the main examples that we like to use. So this is what Polytrichum species looks like in the wild. So that is the gametophyte stage. This is the sporophyte stage. Okay, in the gametophytes, you can see the structure. The gametophyte, for the sporophyte stage, we identify the foot of the sporophyte, which is kaki dia lah yang bersambung dengan gametophyte. The seda or the stalk of of the sporophyte, and the capsule, which will contain the spores of the plant. So sporophyte of Polytrichum species consists of seta and the capsule. Okay, it's the very iconic shape. When I see this, I think mosses. So Polytrichum species can have male or female gametophytes. So if it's a male gametophyte, this is what it would look like up here, and the female gametophytes, it will look like this up there. Fertilization will occur with the aid of water. Polytrichum species produce flagellated sperm, or biflagellate means it has two flagellum, and the sperm of those Polytrichum species will swim in the water. So it's going to swim, it's going to find an archegonium, which is this structure on the female gametophyte, which will have egg inside. So sperm from here would swim over to here, and then that is going to fertilize the egg inside. The sperm came from the male part from the antheridium, which is the male sex organ. Swims over to female sex organ. When these gametophytes of plants grow, they may grow into a thallus shape. So kalau dia bercabang, okay, ini macam bentuk ranting sikit, usually we can call it a thallus. So this is Marchantia species. It is the leaf of the gametophytes are in the thallus shape. This is an example of Polytrichum species once again. Okay, what are other unique characteristics of bryophytes? In bryophytes, the gametophytes consist of only one or a few cells thick, so they are quite thin organisms. So all the cells are placed close to water so that dissolved minerals I need to edit this part out. So gametophytes consist of only one or a few cells thick. Therefore, all the cells are placed close to water and dissolved minerals. This gives it a large surface area to increase the absorption of water and minerals. Bryophytes, most of them grow close to the ground, supported by rhizoids, which are parts that look kind of like roots but are not actually roots. The rhizoids will anchor the bryophytes to the substratum or the material that they are growing on. And rhizoids do not play a primary role in water and mineral absorption. They lack specialized conducting cells. Their main role is just to hold on to whatever surface that they are growing on. So these are examples of rhizoids in Marchantia species. If you take a Marchantia species plant and you flip it over, the underside you will see the rhizoids like this. And in the Polytrichum species, the rhizoids are small bits at the end of the Polytrichum plant. Watery medium is needed for both asexual and sexual reproduction in bryophytes. For asexual reproduction, these bryophytes can reproduce asexually by using gemma from the gemma cups, but it still requires watery medium or raindrops to transfer those asexual gemma. For sexual reproduction, then it would use sperm and eggs, and the biflagellated sperm cells need watery medium to swim from the antagonia to the archegonia. So this is an example of the Marchantia species. You can see the gametophyte stages there and the sporophyte stage, very small on the gametophyte of the plant. Okay, so this is all gametophyte, small bits are the sporophytes. This is Marchantia species in phylum Hepatophyta. This is example of asexual reproduction of Marchantia species, where it will form these gemma cups, little cups. Okay, and inside is those asexual gametes. It's not really male or female gametes. It's going to go out. It's going to grow into more gametophyte plants. Haploid gametophytes will produce the gametangium. Haploid gametes are produced and developed within the gametangium, so this is kind of the multicellular structure that will produce the egg cell or the sperm cells. If the gametangium is female, it can be called an archegonium. Archegonium will produce an egg cell or oosphere, whereas a male gametangium will be called antheridium, and it will produce large numbers of biflagellated sperm cells, or also called antherozoid. So this is example of antheridia and archegonia in Marchantia species. This is the part that will produce male gametes, part that will produce female gametes. So the female gametophyte in here underneath it is that an archegonium with the egg. This is the male gametophyte, the antheridium with the sperm. So the sperm, when there's enough water, it's going and it's mature enough, it will swim out, find the archegonium of other Marchantia species nearby, and swim into it. In the old syllabus, you had to learn about sexual life cycle of Polytrichum species. In this new syllabus, you don't really have to learn it, but I'm going to go through it very briefly anyway, just in case it shows up in the exam, then you won't panic. Okay, sexual life cycle of Polytrichum species. So Polytrichum species have haploid spores that will germinate and grow into haploid thread-like protonymata. Those haploid protonymata will produce one or more buds. Those buds will divide by mitosis and grow into separate haploid and male and female gametophytes. Then those mature male gametophyte will form an antheridium, while mature female gametophyte will form archegonium. Each antheridium will produce many bioflagellated sperm cells, and each archegonium produces one egg cell. So this is what I was talking about, just illustrated in a diagram form. So the spores will become protonymata. Protonymata will produce buds. Okay, those buds will grow into the proper gametophytes. If it's a male, it will produce this kind of antheridia at the top. If it's a female, it will produce this kind of archegonia on the top. So that's what the antheridia looks like. When the sperm cells are mature enough, they're going to swim out. And these egg cells have an opening at the top of their archegonia. Those sperm cells will swim in here and develop the new sporophyte from here. Okay, this is what I was talking about. Biflagellated sperm cells swim through a film of water, such as raindrop, towards an archegonium to fertilize the egg cell. Fertilization occurs within the archegonium, and it will produce a diploid zygote. Diploid zygote will develop into diploid sporophyte embryo by mitosis within the archegonium. And then that diploid sporophyte grows a seta, or a long stalk, that emerges from the archegonium. This is what I was saying. It's going to swim in, grow in the archegonium, divide by mitosis, and grows out. The young sporophyte will grow out of the archegonium. Attached by its foot, the young diploid sporophyte will remain nutritionally dependent on the haploid gametophyte. So, dia tidak akan hasilkan makanan dia sendiri, dia akan bergantung kepada gametophyte dia. This diploid sporophyte consists of foot, seta, and capsule, which is the sporangium part. In the capsule, diploid sporocytes undergo meiosis to produce haploid spores, and when the capsule is matured, its lid will pop off and peristome teeth will release the haploid spores gradually. Okay, so this is it. When it is growing, it will have seta and capsule attached to the gametophyte by the foot. Okay, seta, then capsule. When it's mature enough, it will divide by meiosis. When it's ready, it's going to be released slowly. So that is an example of one species in Bryophytes, which is Polytrichum species. Polytrichum species is a Bryophyta. Okay, and this is its life cycle. This is the same information, just divided into a different diagram. Okay, so that was it for the sexual life cycle of Polytrichum species. That's good as extra knowledge. I don't know if it will come out in any of the tests, but it's good to learn anyway. If you don't understand it, don't stress too much about it. And remember, if you want to find more information, I am not the only source of knowledge in the world. You can definitely go to other videos, other sources, other books to learn with more detail about life cycles of any of these plants. Okay, we're going into the last bit for bryophytes, which is we learn about their terrestrial adaptations. So you know already that plants were some of the first organisms to go from water to dry land. And before that, they were kind of just like protista that were living in water, and now they are suddenly on land. So what enabled them to survive going from such a wet environment to dry land? There are several adaptations that made them the successful things they are today. So the first of those terrestrial adaptations is that they have multicellular dependent embryo. The diploid zygote of these plants will develop into diploid embryo by mitosis within the archegonium. So the gametophyte carry out the photosynthesis and provide the developing embryo with nutrients and water. So kira macam dia punya zygote, dia punya baby plant ni dijaga oleh mama plant. Dijaga oleh female gametophyte. So it is a multicellular dependent embryo that's being protected by the plant. There is also water conservation by waterproof cuticle. So this is the second adaptation. In some bryophytes, the epidermis of the leaves and other aerial parts is coated with cuticle, which is to prevent excessive loss of water by evaporation, thus preventing the bryophytes from being desiccated. In other words, it kind of produces its own layer of sunblock or a wax layer to produce water from evaporating so it does not dry out. The third terrestrial adaptation is that bryophytes have walled spores produced in sporangium. So spores are the haploid cells, and the walls of the haploid spores contain sporopollenin. So these haploid spores have sporopollenin. Sporopollenin make the walls tough and resistant to harsh environments. So this enables the wind-carried spores to disperse through the air without being desiccated or without being dried out. And the outer tissues of the sporangium will protect the spores until they are released into the air. So this is another adaptation to make it tough and to prevent it from drying out. The fourth terrestrial adaptation for bryophytes is the presence of multicellular gametangium. So gametes will be produced within gametangia. Gametangia has a layer of sterile or non-reproductive cells that surrounds and protects the gametes. Okay, this diploid zygote will develop into embryo within the female gametangium, thus the embryo is protected during its development. Okay, so multicellular gametangium surrounds the gametes and protects the embryo during development. So once again, this is the antheridium and the archegonium, which is the male gametangia and the female gametangia. Within it, okay, this is the outer cells. Dia macam bungkus, they are sterile or non-reproductive cells. They're going to protect those gametes that are growing inside. It's going to protect the developing sperm cells. In the archegonium, the sterile cells protect the egg cell, and once the egg cell is fertilized by the sperm, the sterile cells will continue to protect the zygote. So that is pretty much it. Remember that you need to take note of the unique characteristics of bryophytes. You need to take note of how we classify it into 3 different phylum. And you also need to take note of the terrestrial adaptations of bryophytes that enable it to survive on land. Mosses, hornworts, and liverworts may be small organisms, but they play a huge role in our ecosystem, and they coexist alongside many other organisms. Some of them plants, some of them fungi, some of them protists, and some of them are animalia. So that is pretty much it for my lesson on bryophytes. I hope that you learned something from it. I'm sorry if some parts are a bit unclear or feel free to replay or skip ahead to any part of the video that is going to help you learn a little bit more. And that is pretty much it for me from this video. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I will see you again soon. Oh, and don't forget to fill in the worksheet on this part. I didn't put in the part for terrestrial adaptation, so nanti kamu letak sendiri lagi. Find some place for you to write down terrestrial adaptations of bryophytes. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you very much for your time. Bye bye.